Playing each game on the Dreamcast release schedule in literal chronological order has revealed some curious imbalances of dates and genre. From including 2 football games, 2 airplane games, and 2 Formula 1 racing games among the Day 1 launch titles, to having 8 fighting games among the first 29 releases, there didn't seem to be a coordinated effort to evenly cover all genres and gameplay styles. One of the most curious in the first months of the console's existence was a severe lack of straightforward third-person action titles. The absolute bread and butter of the other 3D systems, from the stealth and adventure titles on the PlayStation, to the endless stream of 3D platformers on the Nintendo 64. The closest we've got so far is Sonic Adventure, which is a gargantuan, lunatic, open-world bouillabaisse of random bullshit, and Blue Stinger, which is more of a wandering survival horror game that is even more structurally and aesthetically unhinged. Otherwise, it's shooters like The House of the Dead 2 or Expendable, or diorama beat-em-ups like Dynamite Cop or Soul Fighter. So to get a game where you're just walking around fighting things and completing tasks to tell a story is unique in its familiarity. And after getting a run on PS1 and N64, Shadow Man is the 42nd game released for the Dreamcast. Shadow Man as a character debuted in his own Valiant comic series in 1992, about a New Orleans musician who becomes empowered by a mysterious organization to fight against injustice, embodied by a villainous necromancer named Master Dark. Shadow Man was a massive hit, selling over 100,000 comics a month in 1993, and was so popular that the mayor of New Orleans proclaimed January 17th of that year Shadow Man Day. Video game publisher Acclaim Entertainment bought Valiant in 1996, and resurrected Shadow Man under their own comic banner as a new character, a compulsive gambler named Michael Leroy, who was pursued by the mob after finding some of their money and using it to pay for his brother's operation. He sought protection from a voodoo witch, and when he couldn't make payment, became a zombie hitman named Zero. He is rescued by a different voodoo priestess named Mama Nettie, who imbues him with voodoo powers to fight the possessed corpses that killed the previous Shadow Man. The game, also produced by Acclaim, loosely follows this plot, although it does open with the big bad, Legion, convincing Jack the Ripper to kill himself so he can build an insane asylum for murderers beyond the grave, with the explanation that Jack the Ripper was only killing women to unlock a mystical power. The rest mostly follows, though. Mama Nettie gives Michael voodoo powers to fight the oncoming horde, including 5 serial killers with hellbound warriors' spirits, which the game calls Dark Souls, that Shadow Man has to defeat as they're encroaching on the live side. The game explains all this in a long series of cutscenes and book entries that throw so much information at you at such a fevered clip that it's hard to really process or retain. And if I'm being honest, I didn't realize a lot of these details until I started writing this paragraph, even though I've finished a lot of this game's narrative, such as in conversations with characters like Mama Nettie's guardian assistant, Jaunty, who is a skeleton snake man wearing a festive hat who speaks in a silly, thick Irish brogue that's hard to parse even with the subtitles on.
Whatever, Mick, it's good to see you again. Seems like simply ages since I last set my eyes on your happy, smiling mug.
The game between those cutscenes sees you wandering through large alien areas in Deathside, the name for the area beyond the land of the living, that you can travel to using a charmed teddy bear that belonged to your little brother. The game's cavernous levels can be somewhat confusing to navigate, but it always feels distinctive and cool compared to most of the open-world games of its era. And only the maddeningly recursive jaunts of Sonic Adventure have this many visually distinct areas. It is overall still too reliant on tan, identical-looking corridors, but the size and scope always feels impressive. The actual character models look, pretty terrible, honestly, but the pure vibes of the setting and narrative are so cool here that it smooths over a lot of issues. The actual combat is admittedly sort of miserable, in a way reminiscent of the only Dreamcast release so far even remotely like this, Blue Stinger. The enemies are far too able to attack you without recourse from all angles, despite essentially unlimited weaponry. Blue Stinger required dozens of rounds per villain, but provided extra ammo on a near constant basis. Shadow Man gives you unlimited ammo. The manual says that the gun doesn't have bullets, but in fact, quote, literally focuses the power of death itself, and separates these undead creatures from their souls. Gnarly. But far too much of the game is just having gun battles with these wailing putty people. And so few games of this era were this long, and it's just not an engaging mechanic that makes you want to keep playing, even if it still sails on vibes throughout. Occasionally, the game will break it up with a platforming section, which grew frustrating because part of the pure vibes mood is that everything is really f***ing dark, not optimal for things like jumping or landing. Overall, though, I think it's a better example of this sort of action-adventure, exploration, shooting game than anything we've had on this project so far, or a lot of games from that era. Even if the combat is not always super engaging, just the ability to generally discern where the game wants you to go is a godsend compared to the labyrinth nonsense of the aforementioned Sonic Adventure or Blue Stinger, games I'm genuinely not sure how you beat without a guide. I didn't beat Shadow Man, but I had a good enough time with it. And this game has the kind of framework that a lot of the most acclaimed games of the subsequent decades would follow. And while it's not perfect, it's hard to stay too mad at a comic anti-hero that not only appeared on every major console, but was cool enough to get his own day in the Crescent City. Next time, shouldn't these kids be in school?